Welcome to Side Notes. I'm here with a fellow Canadian veteran who did two UN tours, one over to Bosnia, one over to Croatia, Fabien Melanson. Fabien, first, I'd like to thank you for coming on and being the honor of sharing a little bit of your story with us on Side Notes.
Welcome. Very welcome.
You grew up in a house that was 160 years old in a Acadian community over on the east coast of Canada. What are some of the fondest memories you had of that house?
My grandmother, actually. We were living with my grandparents on my father's side. She would be always, she was an angel, actually. She would be spending a lot of good values moment with me.
What were some of the foods, the sense that you, as you walk into the room and some people smell cooking apple
Yeah,
pies or something when it
yeah.
comes to the grandparents?
She would, well, we would have a wooden stove, and she would making her own homemade bread. And she would put the bread on the wooden stove every break for me for breakfast, actually. And yeah, there was a smell of that the fresh bread.
And this was a homestead that was founded by your grandmother?
Exactly.
So what's that sense now, when you join the military and you're sent over to Bosnia, can you talk a little bit about when you first landed in Bosnia, what was the biggest shock that you saw?
Um, the culture shock, actually. Well, I mean, the devastation of the country, how it was going through. That was the biggest shock to see people coming to you and beg for food or crying actually for food, starving. Actually, that was the biggest shock for me.
And you were talking to me prior, you're talking about when you're putting up this razor wire that in the river right next to you was the water, and the water is radioactive.
Yeah, that was in Srebrenica. Uh, we were doing some barbed wire reinforcement on the camp. Uh, we were being told by some, I'm not sure by whom, that the river was radioactive because they had all the transformers put in the water, and plus they were over 20 some, 25, maybe 30,000 refugee in Srebrenica, and they only had one toilet, and the toilet was the river, no running water whatsoever. So
And also, when you're saying that you're at your post right there, and one time that there was an elderly couple, there was people that controlled that area that where they said to people you had to pay them protection money.
yeah, they actually, if you weren't well placed or you didn't had any protection kind of protection plan, I would say, you were being forced out of certain area in Srebrenica. And that moment, what I was telling you, uh, this elderly couple, they were being kind of harassed by a local member um, to pay certain amount. I don't know if money or tobacco. We don't understood their language, but it came pretty rough, and we couldn't intervene whatsoever.
Yeah, you're ordered by. I think you're saying your master corporal went and asked, and the higher ups were saying no go.
No go exactly. We were ready. Actually, we were ready. There were two of us. Um, we were pointing weapon at the individual, and there were two of us that were standby. No flight vest, no helmet, no whatsoever. Just to go over and try to calm the situation. But we're we're only allowed to watch, actually.
And what were some other policies that you found that sort of haunt you now that you look back? I think one of them was you were saying that you had to strip weapons from certain people.
Yeah, because we were allowed to remove weapons for from the Muslims. Um that was kind of hard because they didn't have any protection, but they were saying that we were there for their protection. But the people, they were the locals, they were out in the mountains. We were just an act of presence, and basically we weren't there. Honestly, for me, say I'm not quite sure we were really protecting them.
And what's some other memories that come to you from Bosnia? Not talking about Croatia because we'll talk about that next, but just Bosnia itself.
I don't think I understood your question, but
Well, what I mean, other memories that come
oh,
from Bosnia.
um, there's good memories. They taught me a lot. I would say the locals, actually, the local people, they were very, very friendly. Um,
Picture that little kid you're saying the sneakers.
yeah, and in this little village called Purachari, it was in Srebrenica. I gave him my old sneakers. He cleaned it up. They were all worn sneakers. He cleaned those sneakers like it was his silver shoes. And he was just using them on Sundays to go see his little girlfriend. Um, but yeah, you know, to see people that they don't have anything else in life and you just give them your old sneakers, they're appreciative, very appreciative.
Now we go over to Croatia where you served in '95. You were saying that there was one time when there's two. You're separating two sides. I think there was the Serbs and the Croats that you're separating, and you were saying that they're firing at you right at after dark.
Oh no, that was still in Srebrenica. That was still in Srebrenica. That was in '93 in Bosnia. The Serb and the Croatian, they were shooting at each other's bunker, and I don't want to misguide you, but it was the time that we were shooting periflare. Is that the time that you were
Yes, that was,
referring? Okay,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was nighttime. Those two bunkers were shooting big calibers. We shot one periflare for 45 seconds. Everything was calm, and after that, the Serb were shooting the Croatian, and the Croatian was shooting at us, and we were hearing the crack and thumb so clearly. We could, the big caliber was going over our head, and we call, uh, we were under attack and all that. So we shot another pair flare. Both bunkers stopped. When 45 seconds after, both bunkers were shooting at us, big calibers. We did reply, but we had .50 caliber and C6, C7. We didn't have that caliber to really counterattack. Um, so we got from the koi company to evacuate in 5 minutes if we're gonna shoot the third one. We shot the third paraflare. It was calm for the rest of the night. Uh, that was kind of, for me, it was kind of strange. Everybody was looking at each other. It's like, because the American had a fleet of aircraft that were going to come and bomb those two bunkers if they were still shooting severely at us.
How
So
close did they come to?
they didn't came. Then they had to, because after five, when we shot the third paraflare, it came quiet for the rest of the night. So, for us, we were just soldier, but we were asking ourselves, is there anybody else on the other line that was listening to us?
Hmm.
It was weird.
So now we go over to Croatia in 1995. What was different about Croatia that you noticed from Bosnia itself?
I was with the tow platoon. Um, the danger wasn't noticeable. We were doing a lot of patrols. They had a lot of old anti. They had a lot of mines, not detectable, old mines. And one in my detachment. Well, my platoon uh, on eight APCs, three blew on mines, and one of my detachment blew on one, and it was devastated. It was all torn apart basically. Know that, um, pretty shook people. The people in in the detachment were pretty shook.
Any injuries?
Injuries, not severe injuries, but yeah, some injuries, yes.
And what else did you notice about Croatia? Because I remember watching it on the news, and I think being in person, you'd see an awful lot more. What about the countryside? Maybe pictures that you saw when it used to be part of Yugoslavia compared to after it became independent?
Um, there was the buildings were pretty much the same, like torn apart, like cultured as well. We weren't basically, on my personal perspective, not much as one-on-one with the public, with the civilians. Because in Bosnia, we were really into towns and supporting the locals. But in Croatia was very, very different.
And between Croatia and Bosnia, looking at it now, what do you feel that may have been one of the underlining causes that caused this civil war the way it was, that caused the Serbians and the Croatians and the Bosnians to go at each other?
Um, it's a religious war. They were doing ethnic cleansing. Um, for what reason, I don't know.
So when you come back to Canada after your 2 tours you've done, now 2004, you're seeking medical treatment at that time for PTSD.
Exactly.
You're being heavily prescribed with prescription drugs. I think you were telling me what it was, but can you tell me what it was plus the side effects of it?
I was prescribed in 2002 when I was diagnosed with PTSD. The medication was Paxil and Zopiclone. Zopiclone is a medication for sleeping. Paxil was the antidepressant. I was very like a zombie.
Almost like you're underneath the water and you're watching everything happening all around you.
Yeah, they remove all interest of living. Actually, you don't want to live. You just really like a zombie. You don't think clearly. You don't have any interest.
Did this lead up to your attempted suicide?
I would say it was a combination. It was a combination because all the attempts that the VA actually was a drop of. It was a drop.
That's when there was an error with your banking and
Exactly.
your pension
Yeah.
went into a different account.
Yeah. I called them. I did call them twice. If I remember, it was either September or October. I called them the first time, and they replied to me saying, "No, Mr. Melanson, your pension is being deposited in your account." I wasn't in my right mind, state of mind because I was heavily medicated. If I would have been in my mind, I would have said, "All right, well, give me the number of the account they're depositing my pension."
And around that time, you're also renovating the old 160-year-old house that you grew up in,
Exactly.
and you're turning it into an animal shelter too to
Yeah.
help rescue animals.
Yeah. Well, the plan was actually the main plan was I would have loved to do it was veteran retreat kind of ish. So if a veteran was in a panic for any kind of sort, homeless whatsoever, would have a place to stay, and with animal combination as well with zoo therapy.
So you had the furnace torn out at that time, and it's just heading in. I think you tore it out right in the fall, and now it's heading into the winter.
Exactly. I had a contractor. We had everything planned. He said, remove the furnace. I removed the furnace. I made 4 big holes to put the metal beams to lift the house so we could make a brand new foundation because it was all rocks. The rocks like all 160, 170 years old, right? So it was all starting to collapse, and so I wanted to make a perfect foundation. Without the furnace, and then in November I called them up again to see how much, if my pension was being deposited in my account, and they replied the same thing, that was being deposited in my account. So I had to halt all renovation. Everything had to be put on the side. And back then I was still living on kind of ish on the credit card because I wasn't having much money coming in my account. I was only getting my military pay because I was on sick leave till June, the next June. And I was thinking to myself, I said, how am I going to survive in June, like just with my VA pension? So yeah, the 4th of December, I had a plan.
And that was around the time when I was reading somewhere that said December you're supposed to get a major payout with your pension, and that's when, at that time, you finally found out that it was the wrong bank account it was going into. I think you phoned the bank and they said they can't give out that information due to privacy. It's not your account.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, in December, when I had my accident, in January when they came back all in on their vacation leaves, I called them up, and I had a swap. I did swap medication, so I had more. I was getting more concentration. I was being more in my mind. So when I called them up and I asked them, she said the same thing because it was directly deposited in my account. So it was kind of confusing as well. So I asked them if she could give me the number of my account. When she did, I called my bank, and the bank couldn't give me any information because it wasn't in my account.
And within 48 hours, Veterans
Yeah,
Affairs corrected it.
they did corrected it. Um, but after that, the after that, what happened to me, I was still, uh, going down the hill financially. So for them, they were saying for those 4 months, what happened is their fault. But what happened after that, it's not their responsibility.
Because the house was without a furnace for all that period of time, and now all the the winter and the way the winter is on the East Coast, it's a lot of snow, a lot of
Everything,
rain.
and the other thing is the house was, everything was done in the inside. The only thing that was left was the outside windows and the roof. And I had to sell pretty much everything. I had some appliances. I sold everything for peanuts because I was going to lose it no matter what, because the dampness was going into the house. The cheap rock had to be removed because all the mold was getting in. Um, eh,
What kind of price tag were you looking at for the amount of repair they have to do? Plus, you have to put in a brand new furnace too.
well, I would have said probably 70,000.
So you went and you had two hunger strikes with Veterans Affairs to raise
Exactly.
the issue. What was the result of that? And also talk about when you were doing the hunger strikes.
The result, well, when I did my hunger strike was I was at the end of my rope. So the first one was just to have the feeling of the feel. The second one was I was determined. I was really determined because they killed me in 2004. The only thing left for me was to bring them the rest of my remains. The flesh and bone. You kill me spiritually uh, and my mind, so might as well give you the rest of my remain. The outcome out of it, I wanted a public apology, a written one, and being compensated. I didn't want them to give me the money to me. They could have hired a contractor, a local contractor, and pay him to bring back my house as it was before. Not not completely finished, but just as it was before. Like the one, you know. Um, but they had to say they had
Mechanism in place.
no. I don't believe that.
So did they at least give you an apology?
I have both. I have a written one and a public one. And the other thing was, I did wanted them to fix my credit at the bureau, um, but with the letter, it is what it is.
And you know what kind of comments you're getting back from fellow veterans in reference to everything you've gone through and what Veterans Affairs has forced you through too?
We are all in the same boat.
And what's one message that you want to send out to other veterans?
Keep fighting.
So at the same time, would you like to sit down with the Minister of Veterans Affairs and ask him, why does something like this happen?
Well, when was my last day of my hunger strike? The 11th day. He, not a minister, but this Keith Hillier came to me with a hot chocolate. I still remember that.
Isn't that retired General Hillier?
No, no. Um, that's I think that's Ken, right?
I think so, yeah.
Him is Keith Hillier. He came to me with a hot chocolate, and he asked me if I wanted to come inside and have have a talk. It blew my mind because I was waiting for that moment. Actually, I've been asking them to have a chat with somebody, at least a one-on-one, since 2005, and this was in 2012, 11, excuse me. So it took them a long time, and even there, it took them 11 days on my hunger strike to come up and say, "Listen, you want to talk?" I found that you have to put your body to extreme situation when you're fighting against your country, horrific situation, and then you have to come back here and you have to fight against your own country for your own freedom. It's kind of
Do you feel that I know we were talking earlier, the situation of the suicide rate? I know November of this year there was an article published in the United States stating that 22 veterans per day committing suicide in the United States. You and I, we know that there's recently been about 5 veterans, right? The question I have to ask you is, do you feel that we're sitting on a powder keg right now where there's going to be more suicides from, veterans from your my era and also the Afghanistan era, maybe even over the World War II era?
The numbers are not there because they're hiding a lot. There's going to be more. There's going to be more, and it's sad to say. It's the truth.
What about the homeless veterans issue? I mean, you were without a house for a long period of time,
Yes.
right? How much worse do you think the issue is going to get for homeless veterans?
It's going to get worse. Especially the veterans there. Well, not the veterans they're still in the service right now. They have to get their self very solid. They have to get established very solidly, because once they're going to be out of the service, there's just going to be like numbers like me and you. They'll have to fight, and some of them are on the new chart. It's not a winning situation for us.
And also there's some offices that they're keeping at least one person there, but at the same time they're saying they're going to smartphones, apps, and all that stuff. That's good for people that know how to use smartphones and that, but myself, I mean, I'm having problems with apps myself. Yeah. And I know there's people older than me that aren't really that familiar with it.
Especially, the veterans there's left, the Korean vets, Vietnam vets, and our generations, and the Afghanistan generation. But the Korean, they're not, into the high technology like the Afghanistan vets, because they're older. It is hard. You have to search very hard to find any information from the VA. It's not in your face, and they ain't gonna tell you where it is either. It's on their favor side.
And when you were over in Croatia and Bosnia, quickly getting back to that, do you feel at any time that you may have been exposed to other areas in regards to dust or some other areas that had chemical, being sprayed there or used?
I would think so, yes.
And do you ever feel that, I know there's veterans out there, they're not getting their whole entire medical records. When you got your medical records, did you receive a letter at the same time that says all your records may not be here due to national security?
I don't recall that. No, I don't remember. Don't think so.
So with veterans that do get that, what would your thought be right off the bat?
They're hiding something.
What steps would you use to actually, correction, what would you like to say to other veterans in regards to helping to deal with situations they've seen? Because you could still close your eyes and still see pictures from Bosnia and Croatia, and you're talking over 20 years ago for Bosnia now, and 18 years ago for Croatia. So what kind of steps would you like to see put in place?
For the other veterans, just keep fighting, like I said before.
Is there any programs you'd like to see, or even areas that would be created where a bunch of us veterans get together?
Well, there's some good, powerful groups there's on the way right now. Like you know some of them as well. They're very
Vets Canada, I think.
yeah, Vets Canada. He's very solid. Actually, Jim Loader was the first guy when I did my first hunger strike. He's the first guy that called me and asked me how much money that I needed so he could try to raise some money for me. I was shocked. For me, I think I have so much ego. That was my problem. I didn't want the public to pay for the federal mistake. That was my, I think that was my problem. My pride was more than anything else. It wasn't for the public to pay for what the government did to me. It wouldn't be fair. I would have felt like I was stealing from the population.
So you actually lost your house in the end run.
Yeah.
And who was the person that actually bought your house out of auction anyway?
My next door uncle.
And is the house still standing at this time, or
it's still standing. Yeah.
So was the house repaired eventually, or just
no? It's still the same.
So it's still no furnace in it, no. Well, is there anything in closing you want to share to other veterans, other people that have gone through an awful lot? Now you've gone through a tremendous amount, seen a lot. You're still living through stuff. Anything you want to share?
Yes. At the end of the day, for me, when I wake up, I put my two hands on my chest, still have a heartbeat. That's plenty enough to kick ass for the rest of the day. So, when you're still living, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, no matter what. And it is a shame that we're going to be losing a lot more veterans by depression and all, PTSD and all that. But for those, they still have lives in them. Still, keep kicking.
Thank you so much for your time there, Fabien.
You're welcome.